Hello and welcome to the Fighting Spirit Podcast. As always, I'm Jason and I'm here to bring you the fight picks for UFC 251, where Kamaru Usman now takes on Street Jesus himself, Jorge Gamebred Masvidal, in what would be a fire contest. Nothing against Gilbert Burns. He earned his way to the big dance, but the Rona has sidelined him for now, and so we get the people's fight instead. We also got a whole host of other firefights, including Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway, Petr Yan taking on Jose Aldo, and a host of other ones. We also have a lot of debut fights as well, so it is kind of balanced out. We'll go over the fights with the best information, though. Here's the show. All right, so let's talk about the main event here. We have Kamaru Usman taking on George Masvidal, and this one, I got two feelings on it. I got what my head says, I got what my heart says. Let's talk about my head first. My head is the numbers, and the numbers have Usman all day. When you look at the guy's record, everything he's done inside of the octagon, honestly, he's basically a perfect kind of fighter in a lot of ways. He strikes well, right? Maybe not technically, but he's a great volume guy. His cardio is phenomenal. When you look at his ground game, maybe his submissions aren't super high, just 1/16, but he knows how to hold guys down. It's not ground and pound like Khabib, but he knows how to put points in the judges' scorecards, and he knows how to pick up decisions. 7 KOs, 1 submission, and 8 decisions over his 16 wins. And I think because of all of those tangibles, okay, we have to give it to Usman, right? Look what he did to Covington, right? A guy that's a great volume striker, a guy that has phenomenal cardio. He beat him on both accords. Then you look over at Tyron Woodley, a guy that is explosive, a guy that has great grappling, a guy that has some decent striking, and he outdid him in all affairs. Rafael dos Anjos, a guy that is a phenomenal kickboxer, is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. What did he do? He made him get on the back foot, and he was not able to put on an assault. Damian Maia is a little controversial because they broke them up when I think Maia was getting to his place where he could have won. But either way, he picked up wins against all of that great talent, guys that do everything well. Here's the problem, though, and this is where my heart comes into things. Gamebred Masvidal is an intangibles fighter. Okay, I picked him to beat Ben Askren. Okay, I picked that fight. I was correct in it. Did I pick it the way it played out? Hell no. You cannot pick moments like that. Picks like that are impossible to make. And Masvidal has that kind of ability. Another thing, I picked him to beat Till as well. Now, did I expect him to win the way he did? No. In fact, in my heart that night, I honestly thought Till was going to be the victor, but he was not. And I think this is another case where even though my numbers say one guy, okay, I got to go with the intangibles guy in my heart, okay? Now, I just gave you cases where Masvidal was the pick on paper, okay? But I think that if anybody is going to get up off the couch a la Michael Bisping style and capitalize on a big event, it's going to be Gamebred Masvidal. He's a guy that everything in his fight career has been leading up to this moment. He's been a 50-50 fighter, he's been a street fighter, and he's finally found the mental capacity at the age of 35 to go out there and realize that he has to win fights in the most violent way possible, and he has to baptize these mother effers. He has to knock out Usman, and he has to do it early if he's going to get it done. Is it going to be a flying knee? I don't know. Is it going to be the 3-piece and the soda? I don't know. He's got to do it early if he's going to do it, and I am not going to look past him and the talent over at American Top Team and say that he cannot get it done. Now, otherwise, straight on paper, Usman's your guy all day. The intangibles, the craziness that is MMA, the unpredictable nature of it all, you got to give it to Masvidal. The end of the day, Masvidal picks up a win. I'm going to call it a loss for myself. But if Masvidal wins, I will not be surprised. Just take it with a grain of salt. The end of the day, I'm going Usman, but just know Masvidal is a guy with loads of intangibles. All right, let's move on to our first co-main. We got 2 co-mains in this one, 3 title fights overall. We got Alexander the Great Volkanovski taking on Max Bust Holloway. And in this one here, I'm going to go with Volkanovski again. Now, the numbers are going to side with Volkanovski because, last time he was the winner with the numbers. Obviously, his numbers have only been edging out Holloway since their last fights, and so Volkanovski continues to be the pick there. Neither one have fought anyone since the loss or win for either one of them. Now, when it came to styles, I thought Volkanovski played his hand very well. Obviously, the takedowns were not there, but his boxing was really good. His leg kicks were phenomenal, and I think we're going to have the same story here unless Holloway has dramatically changed up his game. If Holloway's checking of kicks he's raised the bar on that, or he's elevated some other aspect of his grappling where maybe, he can work the clinch work to tire Volkanovski out a little bit, I can see him potentially getting a win. But honestly, Volkanovski nullified Holloway's boxing with phenomenal kickboxing, and obviously he kept him weary of the takedown the entire fight, which I think is still going to be another factor here. I honestly don't see how Holloway gets it done. And another thing, too, a sidebar here, I was watching one of the, not the embeddeds, but the pre-fight UFC YouTube post, and they do. The runner-up to it. I can't think of what it's called right now. But Holloway was talking about that fight, and he seemed to be in a little bit of denial that Volkanovski got the better of him in that contest. He said, the leg kicks, if you hear them, they don't really hurt, and he wasn't really hitting me hard. He was just touching me. He was scoring points on the scorecard. And you know what? All that is true. But he also couldn't really admit that he was beaten or defeated. And I think that's a chip on the shoulder that I don't like. You have to admit that there's holes in your game, and you have to admit that you're going to fill them. If he goes out and fights the same fight that I believe he is going to, based on what he said, Volkanovski's going to win again. He's going to be 2-0 against Holloway, and Holloway's going to have to rebuild. We'll see how things play out, though. We are going Volkanovski the Great. All right, in the next one here, we got Petr Yan taking on Jose Aldo. And in this one, it's a really hard fight to call, but I ultimately have to go with Yan in this one. He's just looked too good in the UFC. The only problem is that he hasn't had a win to the caliber of Aldo. Aldo, up until recently, had fought all of the biggest names in his division and cleared them all out up until Holloway, and then, of course, the McGregor 13-second knockout, which, hey, that was probably a fluke, let's be honest. Maybe Conor still wins, but that fashion obviously is like Askren Masvidal. It's an intangible, something you can't predict. Now, I want to say Yan picks up a win here, right? He's explosive, he's younger, he's great everywhere, it seems, and his technical striking over at Tiger Muay Thai is just top-notch. He's got the skills to pay the bills. Aldo, though, has the record. He has the background to prove that he can do it. I actually am overlooking a loss here to Alexander Volkanovski, but he's basically proven that he's capable of beating anyone regardless of their ability or their explosiveness or their hype train, if you will, which is what Petr Yan is on. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be on a hype train, but I am saying he is on one. And Aldo is the kind of guy that can take you off of that. Okay, look at Jeremy Stevens, Renato Canero, Frankie Edgar, Chad Mendez, Korean Zombie back in the day. Now we're going back 2013, right? Derailing the Korean Zombie hype train. But that is the kind of guy he is. It only up until recently, if your name wasn't Holloway or McGregor, you didn't beat this guy. And I can't go ahead and predict that Aldo's going to win, but much like a lot of the fights on this card I've talked about thus far, there's got to be a little grain of salt in there that there's a reason Jose Aldo was the king of Rio. He was the greatest 145-pounder that the world had ever seen. And I don't know if Yan is that caliber of guy yet. Could he prove himself to be that caliber of guy? Absolutely. He's shown that he has the explosiveness and he has the fight IQ to exploit some, holes in the game of Jose Aldo. Look at Holloway. Holloway was able to rip to the body on him, really keep him at range, use his speed, use his power, and just ultimately, shock the world by picking up back-to-back TKOs by wearing him out. I can see Yan doing the same. When he threw that great feint to catch Jimmy Rivera, you could see that his IQ is very high, and I can honestly see him doing the same to Aldo. So we are going Petr Yan in this one. Just know that he's not called the King of Rio for nothing. And so I could see a potential upset here where somehow he becomes the champ. We'll see how it plays out. It'd only be a little bit appropriate that Aldo, who was dethroned by McGregor, would also become a champ. I just think that could be, kind of destiny, if you will. We'll see how things play out in Abu Dhabi. All right, the next one here, we have 12-gauge Paige VanZant taking on Amanda Ribas. And so I think what we have here is kind of your hype train, your mainstream attraction, taking on a true, real-deal martial artist. And nothing against Paige VanZant. She is a martial artist, but let's face facts. She's really at this level of the game with a 8-4 record, drawing in the kind of eyes that she is because of how she looks, because of her personality. And Amanda Ribas, who is the same age with a much better record, is really only followed by hardcore MMA fans. Okay, there's a reason Paige VanZant was on Dancing with the Stars. It's not a knock against her. It's just that there's ulterior motives why she gets the big bookings. And hey, I get it. You got to have that kind of stuff in MMA. You got to draw eyes to the sport. But I honestly think here that Amanda Ribas is going to get it done. She's defeated Ronda Makos, Emily Whitmire, and Mackenzie Dern back-to-back. Okay, and Dern another one, although better credentials, honestly, than VanZant, but another one, kind of a hype train. And it was able to derail that and pick up a win. I think she's going to do the same here against VanZant. VanZant hasn't had a really great opponent in, really many years, since 2016. Nope, nothing against Jessica Rose Clark and nothing against Rachel Ostovich, but I think her Michelle Watterson fight was really her last big one. And then before that, Beck Rawlings, Rose Namajunas. But we're going back 4 or 5 years before we can say Paige VanZant had a really competent opponent. Nothing against Jessica Rose Clark and nothing against Rachel Ostovich. But I think Ribas is on the track to eventually fight for a title, whereas Ostovich is on track to get a sponsorship deal, and Jessica Rose Clark is basically, fighting for her life to stay in the UFC at this point. She's had 2 losses back-to-back, Jessica and Panini Kinzad, but we're getting away from the situation here. And I think, honestly, that Ribas is going to propel herself and pick up a great win here against VanZant. Now, VanZant's capable of shocking us, okay? She is capable of getting wins, but I don't think she's going to get it done here. I think that you are going to see Amanda Ribas be catapulted up the division, and I think she's going to honestly make a name for herself at ladies flyweight, where, Shevchenko sits at the top. Let's say it's facts. Paige VanZant wants none of the Bullet Valentina, whereas Ribas would relish the opportunity. We're picking Amanda Ribas to pick up a win in Abu Dhabi. All right, let's move into the next contest here, where Capoeira Santos is going to be taking on the King of Kung Fu, Muslim Salikov. And in this one here, I have to go with Capoeira Santos. I think that despite him, Muslim Salikov, being the King of Kung Fu, I think Capoeira's striking is just a little bit better. Now, they both have phenomenal knockout numbers, and we have Capoeira Santos only having 1 loss over, since 2015, really, against Jing Liang Li. And I think, honestly, he's going to be able to pick up a win over this kind of, I don't know if he's really an up-and-comer. This is his 5th fight coming into the UFC, but he hasn't really fought any great talent, I think, thus far, except for maybe Starpoli, but Starpoli, I think, isn't quite as good as Capoeira, and I think Salikov's going to run into a problem here with Capoeira Santos. Capoeira has much better striking output. He also has some pretty good submission game if it does go to the mat. Although, the rate these guys score takedowns, I don't think either one of them are really going to be going for that. I see it primarily being a striking contest, and so Santos does have the reach advantage there. I think he has a slight striking edge, and I do expect Dos Santos to pick up win here in Abu Dhabi. We are going with Capoeira Santos in this contest. All right, the next contest here, we're going to have Marwan Amirkhani taking on Danny the Hatchet Henry. And in this one, I'm going to go with the Hatchet here. Amirkhani is a great submission artist, trains over at SBG Ireland. He gets some great training, but I think Danny Henry, despite the fact that he did lose to Dan Ige very early in the first round, I think is the better fighter. He was playing, in the UFC very well up until he ran into Ige, and I think Ige is just a really, really phenomenal talent, really best in the division, and Amirkhani has not really proven himself to be in the best of the division. He's proven himself to be kind of a middle-of-the-road guy, a guy that does excel at at submissions, but really lacks a good striking game. And I think Henry's going to be able to take advantage of that with his superior striking. Although this guy does have 5 submissions to his record, I think he does have competent striking, but competent submission game. And I think it'll be enough to nullify Marcin here. When I look at the output, it's nearly 5-1 in terms of strikes, and his takedown defense in Henry is also halfway decent, where he should be able to stop our Marcin from scoring any takedowns to begin with. So honestly here, I think most of the pathways to victory lead to Henry, and he's going to be the pick in Abu Dhabi. All right, last one here before we get to the debut style fights, and we're going to have Martin Day, the Spartan, taking on Davy Grant. In this one, I really don't have too much to say. Both these guys have limited fighting experience in the UFC, although actually Grant has been around for a while. He just has fallen off the radar, not having fought since 2019, and then once in 18, and then a couple times in 2016. He's just not fighting very often, although he did fight Marlon Vera back in 2016 and picked up a win. Either way, though, it's been a while, and I do not expect Grant to pick up a win here. I think Martin Day is the slightly better fighter. He did lose in his debut in the UFC via split decision back in 2018. I think he's going to come back and pick up a win. Either way, though, this is a near debut fight, and so the information isn't necessarily as good as it could be. Let's move on to the debut fights, though. The first one we're talking about is Vulcan Rosemere versus Jiri Prochazka. So we don't really know enough about Jiri from the UFC because he spent most of his time over in Rizin, where he was a very competent fighter, and he is a knockout artist supreme, 23 KOs over 26 wins. Now, coming to the UFC with USADA testing, there's some haziness there if he is quite the same talent outside of Rizin, where it's a little more of the Wild West. But I actually do like him here over Ozdemir. Ozdemir is a similar knockout style artist, but I am going to go here with Prochazka because we haven't seen... Well, I mean, he got a KO over Ilir Latifi, and he did have that split against Rakic. But I think Prochazka here is a little bit of an unknown quantity, and I like him here just a little bit more. He's going to be the pick in that contest. Then in the next one here, we're going to have Leonardo Santos take on Roman Bogota. In this one, I have Santos. Not too much to say about it, but bear in mind, Bogota is a 10-0 product, and Leonardo Santos is 40 years old. So, we'll see how that one plays out there, but the younger guy might not be a bad choice, let's be honest. Then we have Marcin Tiber taking on Maxim Grishin. Grishin is making a late replacement in that one. So honestly, I think that Tiber will pick up a win there. He is a solid fighter and a Jackson Wink product on top of it all. Then we have Ruslan Paiva taking on Zalglas Zhumaglov, a Kazakhstani fighter. And despite his record being 13-3 without any losses since 2017, I still like Ruslan here. I think that he picks up a good win. And the last one, Carol Rosa, Vanessa Mello. And this one, I like Rosa just a little bit more. I think that she's the slightly better fighter and does train over with Jessica Andrade over at Parna Valley Tudo. So let's go over them one more time, though, to round things out. We have Usman, Volkanovski, Jan, Andrade, Ribas, Henry, Dos Santos, Day, Prochazka, Santos, Tybura, Paiva, and Rosa to cap things off. So we'll be back, of course, with a retrospective and some fight picks. So we're going to be spending a lot of time over here and in Abu Dhabi. So on July 15th, we're going to have a fight. On July 18th, we're going to have a fight. And on July 25th, we're going to have a fight. The next one is going to be Cater versus EA. So for the retrospective, we'll have picks for that one. And then the next retrospective, we'll have picks for Figueiredo versus Benavides 2. Hopefully, they both make weight for that flyweight title. And then we'll cap things off with Whitaker versus Till for the month before we move on to Holm and Aldana on August 1st. So we got a fast and furious July here. We're going to keep the picks coming. We're going to try to keep the percentages high, and we're going to do the best that we can for you guys out there. So if you'd like to get in touch with the Fighting Spirit Podcast, though, please get in touch with me on Twitter at MMAFightPicks01. You also can reach me at email at fightingspiritpodcast@gmail.com. You also can go to our Patreon and get some extra fight pick information there and support the Fighting Spirit at the financial level that makes the most sense to you. But yeah, I'll be back soon. We're going to keep them coming fast and furious for you. And until I speak with you again, Happy fight picking.